Hi everyone, welcome to another video on my channel, and in this video I will share the process for getting an amazing Psytrance groove, and I will explain the process of how I came to these results. Let's hear it out. Every Psytrance track needs a great groove if you want to make a better result, and the groove itself will be taking the biggest space in a Psytrance tracks. So every Psytrance groove is made of a drum element together with the bass line, and all of them together are categorized as a rhythm section. We all know that. So the most common order for starting a Psytrance track is by adding, let's say, the kick, the bass line, hi-hat, snare and crash, but just creating these elements or selecting them is not enough to create a groove. As in this process, we only select the color or the sound design or the type of these elements. So this process is important for making the right groove, but it is not enough. So small details in settings, setting the parameters are crucial for getting the advanced Psytrance grooves. So these parameters are the most important to move from, let's say, immediate level sounding track to advanced level sounding track, as there is not even one successful Psytrance track without a great groove that moves the people on the dance floor, which I believe is our main goal or main purpose. And my first advice is that you should invest a bit more time, effort and energy and pay a bit more attention to the groove itself, as it can be super powerful drive to the whole track. So I used to start every track with an empty project, but the more I work and the further I go with my career, the more I realize how hard it is to create the kick from the scratch, then create the bassline from scratch, select or create hi-hats, snare, claps, loops, and then glue everything into a groove that will stand out and drive the whole track. So I believe that all of these together in this order is too much work and makes the whole process way more difficult. So what I did, I changed the order of the processes by moving the rhythm section sound design for a bit later in a track. And I'm starting the track lately with the drum template from the previous tracks that I made. I do change all of these elements a bit later on, as I really do not want to repeat myself and in the end to get one track sounding set where all tracks will kind of sound alike. So I'm using the template mostly because of the levels, and I use the template as I have the elements in the project already. So I'm starting a track with the material that sounds good from the beginning. So I add, change, modify the elements in the moments when I feel that these elements needs a change. But the most important is that I won't start adding the single shot sounds or any other elements before I'm pretty satisfied with the groove results of the whole project. So I do believe that most of you are interested in how to create all of these elements, but most likely many of you believe that only a selection of the elements or the sound design of them is what makes the groove. But actually, by selection or sound designing these elements, we only decide how these elements will sound individually, while connecting them all together is another story, and this video is about that. I would say that the first step toward a great Psytrance groove can start from the bassline. After we added all the elements, just the choice of the key root note will already create a track mood. So choosing the track mood will dictate what types of the groove can we use and what will suit the best for this track. So there are many different Psytrance moods and grooves, but I will stick to the rolling bassline groove for this track, and I make videos about something that I just have created in the studio, as I believe this way the presentation will be the best and that I'm already deep inside of that topic. So this process is around a week long in my case. I will start it and I will do small corrections each day until I find that combination that drives me. And only after I'm 100% sure that that's it, I will start writing the track down. I was trying to feel it to be 100% that the groove is good enough. So I was extending, changing the elements, adding the new loops, I did some modification on the groove, playing around with it, but somehow I couldn't connect with it. So I decided to make a certain changes. So this is the groove that was the first imported from my track Sacred Dance, which I have changed just before the summer festival season of the Europe this year. So let's hear it out. Now, after importing this template from the previous track, I spent a bit of time modifying and changing it to sound better, tighter, more drivey, or in one word, I tried to make the groove better. So by changing the details on the kick, the bass line, and other settings, I made it to sound way better from the previous one. I changed the kick pretty much, added a different punch on the kick, modified the bass line and ducking effect, or what we mostly call sidechain, even though it is not sidechaining. But I was trying to modify this groove so it fits better in for this track. After that, I didn't feel this groove to start the track, so I decided to play a bit more and find that spot or moment when that track would start driving me. So I made another version of the project and I added a few bassline layers as well as changing the snare and the clap, adding some loops, modifying the hi-hats and rearranging them. So after a few days of listening, I just couldn't connect with it and I decided to try to change the key root note. I could do that as I didn't have any other tonal elements in a track beside the bassline. So it was pretty easy. I played around with a few key notes and somehow the A got my attention. So I needed to modify the bassline so it sounded better, as after changing it from F sharp, every time we transpose the bassline note, some modification on the processing are smart things to do. So if you use the multi-band plugins to shape the phase of the bassline as I do, the crossover position between the first two bands will have the biggest effect on the bassline phase. So it is the first thing I will start changing and try to find in which position will be sounding the best. Also, after transposing the bassline to another note, the harmonic balance needs a correction as well. So we cannot have the same harmonic balance in every note, as there are the dramatic changes in harmonic position in different keys. So it is not the same in D sharp and A sharp, for example. Now, the bassline changes or modification of the bassline for a better Psytrance groove are next. So I tried to open and close the cutoff of the bassline filter. I tried many phase position of the bassline by using the Vox&Go PAJ 979, and I tried to find which one would be the best for the better groove. So I made the many changes on the kick as well, the kick's end frequency, so pitching down the kick, pitching it up, extending it, trying to find a better frequency response, extending the kick, adding the fade out on the kick. So I do not follow any rules anymore about the kick length just because some YouTubers have said so. So I know for sure that using all existing combinations and techniques and listening to them will lead me to the best sounding combination. So I do try all of them and carefully listen. And I know for sure that the best results will come by trying as many as possible tricks and techniques and not by following a certain rules. All the rules we create simply just because we got certain results we wanted in a certain situation. While in a different situation, that same process on the kick or the bassline can be a wrong choice. So just because we once got the results we wanted does not necessarily mean that we should implement it every time. So in some cases, just the opposite can be the right move. So trying as many as possible and carefully listening is the only right way in my opinion. So the idea at the beginning was to create a bit more uplifting and a bit more modern sounding track. So I made this bassline groove to be chopped, and these gaps were filled with the fills and the effects that were covering these spots where the bassline stopped. But as I'm 100% hypnotic Psytrance lover, I could not connect with this groove after a few days of listening. So even though it sounds really, really good, and in the first few days, so I decided to bring back my beloved hypnotic Psytrance bassline and see if that would be a better fit for me. So this is the previous project before the final one. So what you just heard was a perfect fit or the perfect groove for me to start a track. So I made this hypnotic bass line, I did certain corrections, and in this final project, basically it's not the finished track, but still I believe this is when I ended up with adjusting the groove. Maybe it will go through a certain changes a bit more, but I really feel it, that it sounds good enough from the aspect of sound design, from the groove itself, like the combination or interaction in between of the kick and the bass line and hi-hats. So the whole groove is kind of created for me. So this is the moment when I felt the track is starting. And the whole idea was that I spent enough time in designing or modifying that groove so it sounds good from the sound design perspective, that it also gives that vibe that the bass line is going down or sidechaining or ducking in a good way, that I have a decent sounding clap and kick, the hi-hats, that I have like enough elements for the drum section that it already start sounding good enough. Definitely I will be adding certain elements as the track moves forward in order if there's certain needs for, let's say, a bit faster hi-hats in a moment when I'm gonna maybe create some melody. So it really doesn't matter, but what you heard previously was good enough for me to start a track, and this is what I ended up creating. So far it is still a bit dry, but as I said, I want to have groove to drive the whole track and then just add just enough elements in this track as I feel I should. This is now everything with the intro. So this is how much I did in this track, but also I just want to go through, because every time I start and save it as a new project, I also like to bounce the kick and the bass, so I cannot go in all the details. So that means that in every new project, I'll have bounced without any processing from a side, and that way I'll just be adding the new processes so that I can follow up what I did and what changes I created in every project. So what I did over here, I felt that it was a little bit more clicky, and I did put the FabFilter Pro MB to kind of limit or compress this mid or the high, or this punch of the hi-hat on the kick as well as on the mids. Without the Pro MB, it sounds a bit more clicky, and somehow this dot is a little bit, or this punch of the kick is a little bit more, I'd say, too saturated. And with this, like, the kick is more going in a low end, and somehow it sounds a bit warmer. So this is from the compression, and what I did over here, I did reduce on 165 Hertz because listening on solo, we cannot make a right decision. To be honest, I believe that now it sounds way better without this EQ setting, so I will just drop the FabQ3. So anyway, I did certain changes on the bassline as well over here, so yeah, I changed again from the previous project, I changed the slope, and here I also changed a little bit of the frequencies, and just playing around with the small settings in order to find the best sounding groove. So it's a combination between the sound design, a bit of mixing skills, as well as the feeling of it, like how it should sound. This, what I did over here, there's nothing wrong if I leave the kick clicky as it is. But without this click, somehow the attention goes in the low area, in the low frequencies, and this is why I believe it's a bit more hypnotic and not that much like taka 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 in front of the face. So anyway, this is my way how do I start it, and if you wish to start a track this way, I recommend you to use some of your previous rhythm templates that you are happy with and use them to start a track. So then you can start changing the bass line, adding some other elements and play around with it. I also believe that if you use the uplifters and other tension building elements, will also help you to feel the energy of that groove and play around with it. So I do advise that you have all these elements as well. So don't forget to save a new version each day or each session, as you will maybe make a mistake, and the easiest way to get back to previous point is by keeping the backup project. If you still do not have that good sounding template, you can find some online to buy, and of course I have one in my web shop as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I really hope that you like this video. So as well, if you like all of my videos, please subscribe, share, and see you soon in another video. Bye.